excited to be here in the, metaphorical sense, since I am literally in the same place I've been for the last 4 months. But it's so lovely to see new faces, familiar faces, and I love sharing knowledge. And a bit of that background is that I work now at a big agency that's global, and it's been really amazing to get a global perspective on advertising and marketing, work with big brands like Wendy's and Miami Tourism. But in my heart, I'm still very much a local gal. I grew up in advertising, for you could say, at a smaller agency, and a big piece of the start of my career and a lot of my consulting and pro bono work now is very much involved with local medium to small size businesses. So even though I love having that big agency perspective, I often tell people that my passion is distilling that to an audience that I can help impact on a local level and help support my city. I also want to thank all of you guys because every time I come to an ArtsKC webinar, I get to learn about the amazing ways that different individuals and organizations are supporting our city and supporting the arts. So thank you so much for all you do. I am a Nelson member. I love going to the symphony and the ballet. I have the lyric opera on my list. I still haven't been to an opera performance here, but when things get back to normal, that's going to be very high. So I'm a very passionate patron of what you all do. And as we go through, I'm very excited to learn more about which organizations are represented today. If you'd be willing to share, I'd love to find out who you're representing. So if you want to drop that in the chat, that could be something that might enhance our conversation as we go through, because I might be able to pull out some specific examples or some thoughts for your particular vertical. And then the last thing I wanted to share is that I have worked across social, search, and content strategy. So I recognize, I think, like one or two familiar faces from the Facebook advertising webinar with ArtsKC earlier this year. And that's where I kind of got my job started in, and have since transitioned to SEO because I became so passionate about content strategy and about the way that things are discovered and the power of Google. So I love fusing those two things together. And if you have a question that kind of relates to how your ecosystem works, feel free to bring that here as well, because SEO is very much about thinking about how all of your channels work together and how different signals from different channels might inspire different searches to your domains. So with that, we'll get started. I wanted to start off a bit with the state of search and how much it has evolved. Anybody who has been a marketer or even just a consumer of content in the last 5 to 10 years knows how rapidly things have evolved. It used to be a pretty simple journey, and now it's become much more complex. And there's more devices, there's more properties, there's more ways in to engage with the brands than ever before, whether it be an Alexa device that uses Bing, a Google device that uses Google, or even the power of social media and how that can drive significant signals to your site that shows Google how powerful your site is. There's so many different ways for people to get information and for an organization to show their authority. And with that in mind, the search result page itself has changed so much. This is such a big throwback. Like, I love that we have these screenshots still, because it kind of reminds you about how far things have come so quickly. Back in 2005, it was just pretty much blue links. That was it. There wasn't much else to a search results page. Now you think about a listing like Wendy's, and you have things like, ads at the top. You have this banner here at the bottom that's called, or at the side, that's called the knowledge panel that talks about the brand. You have all this local information. You have tweets being pulled in. You have reviews being pulled in. You have structured data, which we'll talk a bit about later, but is Google's language for how it understands your site. Moral of the story is that things have gotten so much more complex, and there's so much more to navigate. But with that also comes additional opportunities to help elevate your presence and become more visible across search engines. So let's break down some of those building blocks of SEO. I wanted to start with the basics and then kind of build from there. The 10 most important critical ranking factors are listed here, and I wanted to talk through those a bit, and then also some tools that you guys can use to investigate and dig into some areas where you can improve these. So first off, a secure and accessible website. And when they talk about secure, we're not talking about like ADT, home security, but more about your SSL certificate. So if you've ever visited a site and, Google flashes a warning that's like, oh, this looks a little sketchy. Are you sure you want to proceed? And you're like, yes, I want to proceed. I know this is a good site. They're like, are you sure? That is Google kind of firing a warning that, hey, this site might not be secure. And if you have a site that you don't see a little lockbox to the left of your URL, little, like, not lockbox, I'm just a lock. If you don't see that lock, then that is something that you need to address. That means that your site needs an SSL certificate, which is basically just ensuring that you have a safe site that was not going to, that someone can't hack as easily to take information, and that Google kind of has the trust and authority with you that you are who you say you are. Page speed is also very important. Google actually supplies a tool called Page Speed Insights, and all of the links that I talk about today will be in the PDF that Mariah sends out, so you'll have a good go-to source to access all this information. And the most important thing out of that page speed report is mobile, because Google now looks at the mobile version of your site, and that's what they go off of. And if you have a slow mobile site, not only will Google ding you for that, but it'll also affect your user experience metrics as well, because you might have people who won't wait for it to load, will bounce off, and Google will say, oh, well, that must not be a good site experience. There are several ways. If you do that page speed insights report that we have linked here, and you do see that you have a really slow site, there are some simple ways to improve that by taking a look, for instance, at your images. Do you have super large images? Is there a way to compress them down so that they are, more easier to load? There's also a technique called lazy loading that you could possibly talk to your developer about. It's not something I can personally implement, but it's all about having the page load based off of where the user is on it, so they have a better experience, and also so that Google, sees that loading factor and doesn't ding you for it. Mobile friendliness is important in general. Google, recognizing that we now live our lives on our phones and that some people don't even have a computer anymore, are very big on the experience of your site on mobile. So highly encourage you, if you haven't done it yet, to explore your site on your mobile phone. See what it looks like on an iPhone versus an Android versus a tablet. It's very important just to make sure that simple things like having your buttons big enough that a thumb can hit it, as well as other simple things like the way you structure your content and having H2s, which are headings that break up your page with different subheaders. All of those things are great ways to help your site be recognizable in Google, as well as recognizable in a good consumer experience. Because at the end of the day, if you make your site for a consumer experience, most of the time everything with Google will follow, because Google is following the consumer experience and trying to make the best consumer experience, because they want people to continue to use their products, both as marketers and as consumers. And the better that they can make the search results that they give, the better experience people will have in finding their answers. So in thinking about things that way, and thinking about that accessibility from a mobile standpoint and a consumer standpoint, that'll really help lift your site in terms of visibility. There's some other things that you can't control as much, and that's how long your domain has been around, your URL structure and your authority. URL structure is something that it's very smart to be strategic about, in the sense of Google reads a URL just like a person does, in the sense that they absorb the first, folder first, and then the next folder, and then the next folder, and they basically, kind of grade the importance of your site based off of that. So thinking about your URL structure, if you have information that is at, this is not a knock on ArtsKC, I'm just making this example up because it's the first URL I can think of, is like artskc.com/about/donation/fundraising/meet our artists. Like, if that meet our artists page was supposed to be something important and something that we want our users and Google to find, you would maybe want to think about restructuring your URL to move that up in terms of importance. And the other thing to think about too is what kind of signals are you sharing when you're using your URL structure? Are you using words that align to the way that people think about your brand and think about different things involved with your brand? For instance, if the Nelson was putting on an exhibit and they called it a show, and that was what they put in the URL, that would not make sense. They do say exhibits, so they're all good, but that's why it's very important to understand the way that people think and perceive your brand, so that you can reflect that in the URL structure, so that they can also better find that via Google. Optimized content is also really fun, and that's the part that I get super excited about. That's kind of my main bread and butter with my clients. We're going to dig into that after we get past these kind of dry basics. That's the point that I'd love to kind of open things up for discussions and take some examples, because content strategy is where you can get really creative. And as a proud nerd, that's where I get excited to think about, how can I build my house technically so that my content can have the best performance possible? And how can I be really creative with what people are desiring, what questions they're asking, and aligning that to what they're asking? It's also, when I was talking about your ecosystem earlier, it's also about how you drive that ecosystem. When working with Wendy's, so much of my optimization has to do with what media they're pushing out. So they're controlling that media and that narrative, but also we want to make sure that it's the stories that we want to be discovered are discoverable as possible. A little example is that when we were launching delivery, there were all these questions about the way it works, and the only page that people could find was the basic Postmates delivery page, and it didn't really answer those questions as well. So we created a page on Wendy's, had that FAQ, it had the structured data to relay that information to Google the most effectively, and it gained traffic, gained rankings, and now sits right by the other delivery page. So if you want to just go ahead and order, you can order, and if you need more information and then you want to order, you can do that too. Technical SEO is definitely something that, depending on the size of your site, you'll want to find a consultant, or even just maybe like a good buddy that you take out to coffee or a beer every once in a while, because technical SEO is definitely, it's a little bit more complex, and it requires having an understanding of the way that sites work, crawlers work, domains work. It is definitely something that I'd say that, thanks to sites like Squarespace and WordPress, they've made it a whole lot easier to address these issues. But when you're thinking about technical SEO, I like to very much compare it to like when you go take your car in to get a diagnostic. The mechanic charges you for like the machine he hooks up to your car, or she, that gives you the results back and tells you, okay, this is what's wrong with your car, what do you want to fix? An SEO technician does the same thing. We use a variety of tools to figure out what might be wrong, what might be holding your site back from visibility, and then most of the time we come back to you and say, okay, here are the errors, like where's your developer, or do we have a developer we can ping to fix this? So some of those things you might look for would be the big glaring things would be like 404 errors. You never want a 404 error. That's when you click on a link and there's nothing there. But also there could be some missing elements where you have opportunities to add more information and help Google and consumers understand your site, like titles and meta descriptions, which we'll get in a little bit more into when we get into the content portion. Another note on technical SEO is that Screaming Frog is a free tool up to a certain amount of URLs. So as long as your site's not too big, you can use Screaming Frog to identify different site errors such as 404s, those missing elements, images being too big, redirect chains when a redirect redirects to then land somewhere versus just going from A to C. So definitely recommend having that knowledge, and then finding a friend, or if you have a developer or a resource within your walls, to figure out and strategize how you address those. User experience, like I was talking about, is really important. And that's just about, I think, as marketers and also as creators of aesthetics, figuring out, like, does your site offer the experience that people are seeking? Are there ways to improve it? And that can be both from a content point of view as well as technical point of view, like I was talking about, making buttons big enough that people can click on them. It's also very important to be ADA accessible. And happy to send through, I'll make a note of that because I don't have that link, the ADA guidelines. We actually are just now in Wendy's ourselves assessing that and making sure that we're all up to snuff with ADA standards, because a lot of times if people are using screen readers and the right information is there, they can't navigate a site because they're not getting the right information to the screen reader. So that's also very important. Links are a big factor as well. Links are one of those things, like an old hat SEO practice was to reach out to people and do link building. And a bit more of like the newer side of the practice is creating really great content and strategies that encourage link building. I think as local organizations, you can lean on some of those more traditional tactics because we do have so many, strong domains that are associated with the arts in Kansas City, and they're interconnected and, friends and allies. So thinking about how links will share almost like the power with each other when they're linked to each other. So for instance, and something that on the local level that I always encourage is press linking. If you're mentioned in the press, make sure you have an area, a very clear area where they're linking to. And you can even get strategic with it to be like, could you, when you put out that press release or that news article, could you link to this specific page, because that's the page that lines up the most with this content versus our homepage. That can kind of help you be strategic in how you elevate the right pages. And the more quality domains you have, that the content on this page from this high quality domain matches the content on your page, on your domain, Google will look at that and pass on more of that power per se between the two links. I was talking earlier about social signals, also an area where you can focus in on. Social signals, even though Google says like, oh, traffic is a signal. So if you get traffic from Facebook to your site, yes, that is a positive signal. Social signals go even beyond that. If you think about Wendy's and what a stir they make on Twitter, a lot of my job is sometimes figuring out what's the conversation there and how to capitalize on that in the best way possible to drive whatever Wendy's goals are forward. And then real business information. We'll get in a little bit more into local search, but I think that's where local search really comes into play, and making sure that you have the information that helps people not only find your business but understand your business. And I also want to share two tools that I use in addition to Screaming Frog, and if you don't have them on your site, they're not hard to set up. definitely it's like something that you like. I would say it's a must-have. Google Search Console. Google Search Console is kind of every update Google makes, they kind of focus in how you track that update on Google Search Console. So for instance, even that page speed insights link I showed you, they're going to be rolling that into Google Search Console as like this core vitals update. And if anybody has played around with structured data, they're going to be like moving that structured data testing tool. They've moved that and kind of pushing people into using Google Search Console for that as well. It's all about making more disciples of their products, but it is a central place where you can really get to the root of what might be not going well on your site. It's also, Google has started to share more metrics from their Discover area. Discover is like when you, for instance, working with the Miami client, they surface a lot in those like travel guide type searches from Discover. So if you've ever noticed, if you're planning a trip or looking at a certain destination, these little like articles and things will sometimes pop up. It'll be like, oh, do you want to, see this travel guide? And do you want to see our Google guide for this? And the more that you pop up in those locations, the more that you can drive additional traffic to your site. But it's also a great signal that that content that Google is surfacing is hitting the mark. So in the Google Search Console area, you can see what you're getting, how many impressions and clicks you're getting from search, as well as from those different Discover area opportunities. I'm going to pause here because I did see some questions and I just want to make sure that I address anything that might be pertinent. Press linking, how to get around paywall and time span limits with the KC star. Ooh, that's a tough one. So in terms of, I don't really know how to get past the paywall, but if you have the URL and they're willing to link to you, Google really doesn't care if there's a paywall. It's going to be able to look past that paywall and see the content. I think the only thing you might run into is that Google does assess, like, once someone clicks on that link, what is the user experience? Do they consume that info? Was it a quality link? So I would say that for something like that, you might want to just make sure when you are featuring that link in your content to make that call out. Just say, hey, this is a paywall, or hey, this is a timed timed news source, so that your consumer understands that and they don't click on it and then get annoyed. I know I click on like business journal links all the time and then I'm like, oh, I can't access that. So, however, you still get value from including that link, even if it's a paywall news source. Okay, we're past the dry stuff. Let's get into the fun stuff, the content stuff, the areas where you guys can really use your creative prowess to get in and help optimize for Google. So Google has this method for evaluating content that they call EAT, and it has to do with expertise, authority, and trust. I feel like all of you are in a good place in terms of authority and trust because you're either individuals or brands. There's not other people really, writing about your content that have as much authority as you. The place where we can really up our game, I would say, is like expertise in the sense of what can you share that really is strategic in what people are looking for. So I have this screenshot here as a little bit of a guide to all the different areas where you can optimize for SEO, just in case, and sorry if this is repeat for anybody. I just wanted to make sure that we covered all the basics. But in terms of when you Google something and you see, a title for something and then the meta description, that is the title tag and the meta description that I was talking about in terms of those SEO elements. You want to make sure that every page on your site not only has that, but has it optimized for the consumer experience. And I say that anybody who says title tags and meta descriptions are boring and not creative, I would just strongly disagree. Because when you think about the user experience and how dry so many search results are, how couldn't you have some fun, even though it's just a small subset of characters, to help drive people to whatever you're talking about? We try and do this with Wendy's, and sometimes even try and look at the questions people are asking and use that in the start of the meta description. So, wondering what sauces and dressings Wendy's has, because that's a legit question people ask that there wasn't a piece of content for. And now that content piece on their blog is like number 2 for sauces and dressings for Wendy's. So I think there's a lot of ways you can insert your voice of your brand into those elements. And another point on characters is that these do have a character count. So my links in here will help you like, get those character counts and understand it's 60 characters for the title tag and 160 for the meta description. So even though you do have a smaller subset of characters, it's still enough that you can, be creative with, and you want to make sure that it's not too long either. Google will cut off your title and they will ding you for a meta description, and also it's like not a great experience if like it just keeps on going. Now, don't panic if you're like, I haven't put any title tags or meta descriptions on my site. Google currently is just grabbing whatever the top of your text, the top of the page text is, and just filling it in and filling in what you currently have as your title. So don't think that, people are Googling you and it's completely blank, but it is a way to optimize and to, up your game. Headlines and header tags are also very important. Each page has an H1 tag, which should be similar to your title. And I think something that has risen in a lot more importance, recently, is H2 tags, which are those subheaders. Like I was talking about earlier, subheaders are important not only for letting Google know what the different sections of your site are or that content piece are, but they're also really important for the user experience. I don't know about you guys, but if I get on a page and it's just like a giant block of text and it's super small and there aren't any pictures, I mean, I know that Google has 10 more great references, so I'm just going to bounce back and find another. So using those subheaders to break up your content. And also, I would throw out that if you guys have noticed how search results have gotten so much more visual, and sometimes Google just answers your question at the top of a page, you are more likely to secure those very visual search rankings when you have subheaders, as well as like bullets for specific information, because you're basically, saying, okay, this is the question someone has, and then here is the specific part of my content where I answer it. So I often like to think about subheaders as a great way for a user experience, but also a great way to help understand the content of your page. I think we've already talked a bit about user engagement. Using Google Analytics to understand the way that people are engaging with your site is very important. If you're seeing that people are just bouncing off and they're not engaging with the page that you're driving to, it's good to evaluate why is that? What can I do to make it a better user experience? And then the last 2 points are about keyword cannibalization and auditing your content. I think they kind of tie together because while you do want to go after related keywords, and even though your brand name and different variations of your brand name might rank different areas in your site, you don't want to make a ton of articles about the same thing. It's kind of like being in a bidding war against yourself. So it's important to audit your content to see what is performing well, and then also auditing in terms of keyword research, which we're going to get into, what people are searching for, and bringing those two worlds together to make the best page experience. And when you're thinking about optimizing content, I always say, start with keyword research. Keyword research, like, people do not lie to Google. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I can't meet somebody who'd be willing to share their Google history from the last 5 years, because we don't lie to Google. We share our most vulnerable questions, and we expect answers. So with that in mind, keyword research is really almost like a peek into the soul to figure out what people are searching for and what their motivations are. I'm going to share some fun and some of them are free, some of them are almost free, like $10 a month ain't bad. Keyword research tools that you guys can use, that I use in my everyday, and it helps me understand the way that people search for things so much more. I work on a couple consumer products for Sanofi, everything from Dulcolax to Gold Bond to Unisom to Allegra. And across all of these products, every time I'm surprised because there's something I didn't think of that I find in the keyword research and that we can incorporate. The other note on keyword research is to incorporate it naturally, to, again, that kind of adds into that user experience, something that you enjoy reading that sounds like a human, not like a robot, but also incorporates those keywords. And that you can do that strategically, but you don't want to overstuff. You don't want to like make it so that it's just oozing with this one particular keyword you're going after. You want to make it feel very natural. And then, like we talked about earlier, optimizing the on-page signals like title tags, meta descriptions, H1s, all of that is a big help as well. Something that I think is a huge opportunity, especially in the Kansas City area, I have been saying for like 2 years, I'm going to start a blog to like answer all these questions I see on Google that like are local search questions that aren't being answered, and still haven't found the time for it, but it's on my list. Local search is a huge opportunity, especially for a market where we have enough people that they're searching, but it's not as incredibly dense as like a Chicago or a New York. And local search is even more important during the pandemic. So a quote that really stood out to me that I used in an article recently was Google and the pandemic have made, and he's using some abbreviations, GMB is Google My Business, which are those, panels about your business that show up when you're searching or when you're looking for a restaurant, and you can click to the website, you click to the menu, you can see the hours. That's a Google My Business profile or listing. And he says Google and the pandemic have made Google My Business listings into the most important local marketing tool for small to medium businesses and multi-location brands. And I think that's really important to just pause and think about, because in the times as uncertain as this, some things are open, some things are not, some things have limited hours. If you don't update your Google My Business profile, somebody seeking that information might not be able to get it, or they might not be able to get it fast enough because they're not going to go to that specific what's happening page on your site, or go seek out that one post on Instagram where you said that you're not going to be open today. It's very, very important to claim your Google My Business listing as well as optimize for it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Again, you can use keyword research to optimize your Google business listing. You, of course, want to choose the correct category or business type. They make it very easy once you claim it. Claiming can be a little complicated sometimes, but they've made it better. They just really want to make sure that your address, matches up with where you're saying you are. But you definitely want to choose the correct category or business type. They kind of step you through that. But there are some other kind of cool, fun ways that you can up your Google My Business profile. There are Google Posts, which are 7-day lasting blog posts that show up beneath your business listing. And on mobile, they're actually even more visible. They show up right underneath. I have a screenshot of them right here. So see how, I guess I could move this a little bit, but see how this listing's here and the Google Post listing is right there. That is great for, especially in a time like now, if you have changes or updates that you want to share with your consumers. It's also a great way if you have quality content that you want to increase traffic to. That's a great way to do it. So for the Miami client that I work with, a quick little side story, they got this really cool access to the City of Miami's knowledge panel. So when you Google Miami, we now have the ability to add Google Posts to the bottom of that panel. And so we now use a combination of keyword research, seasonal trends. We also look at which what content we have that's on the second page of Google that we want to increase to the first page. And we use Google Posts to drive incremental traffic. And it's allowed us to increase second page rankings to first page rankings, as well as drive more partner outbound clicks, which is, kind of the whole point of their site, because they're a, oh my gosh, tourism board. There you go. So that's like the whole point of their site, is to help drive, interest for their partners. Google My Business tools are really cool to kind of unlock. I definitely encourage you to explore. They also have this questions area where you can answer popular questions about your business. So definitely encourage you to dig into those and to optimize them, to the best of your ability. The other thing I would say is encouraging reviews. Going back to, this is like a Google signal as well as a user signal. You want to have reviews on your Google My Business profile to kind of like encourage your validity, your authenticity, but also it's a great way just to like have people want to engage with you. I think this is especially important for like individuals, studios. Genevieve, I think this would be a great tactic for you, something that I have a friend who's a local esthetician and makeup stylist person, and she was showing, we have like ads running, and she's showing up, and she just was getting frustrated because she's like, people are, I can tell they're searching for me and they're looking for me, but they're not, and they're clicking my Google My Business profile, but they're not signing up for an appointment. So we did this whole program where we encouraged people to leave reviews, like they got entered into a raffle if they, left a review, and it's really helped kind of like that trust factor. And she's gotten more traffic to her site since then as well. So both things happening at once has resulted in her getting more customers. And then additionally, I'm going to go down a little nerdy rabbit hole for a second when thinking about structured data. Structured data it looks really complicated because it's like code that you put on your site, but really it's not. It's kind of like paint by number. So for instance, if you go to schema.org, which I will include that link to Mariah as well, you can start to look around for different kind of schema that applies to you. And they have so many options. They have a local schema, they have an organization schema, they have different schemas depending on what type of organization you are, whether you're a nonprofit, you're a venue, fast food for Wendy's. They have all of these options. I would encourage you to go and explore those and see what applies to you. The ones that play the best on the local scale are local business, organization, and product and service schema. So I'd encourage exploring those. And a lot of times, like I was talking about how Squarespace and WordPress have more tools to help you inject that schema, you might not even have to include a developer for this. You might be able to insert that into your site using some kind of plugin. But like I said, it's kind of like paint by numbers. They say, okay, what's the name of your organization? All right, where's your website? Okay, can you link to a picture of your logo? And you just fill these in, and then you use your Google Search Console to make sure that Google understands what's going on and that it's firing. And if it is, you will see, I have not seen schema implementation without some rise in traffic, because you're just going straight to the source. Instead of Google, instead of having to wait for a bot to come by and crawl and understand your site, you're just telling Google exactly what your site is. And it definitely helps in terms of your visibility. So we're getting to like the Q&A portion, and before we move into that, I also just wanted to talk through some of these tools that I'm going to be linking to in the final deck for y'all. Answer the Public is a really great free tool. I have a screenshot of it on this slide. You go there and you can use it for free, and you can put in a phrase. I put in ballet, and it gives you all of the different combinations and prepositions that somebody searches for related to that topic. So it can really help you understand the way that people think about a topic and what questions they might have about it. For instance, I was doing some research recently for a volunteer gig on mental health, and this kind of helped that business owner understand the way that people were thinking about mental health. He didn't realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that price was such a big deal. And he's a Black business owner, and so he was like, oh, I didn't realize that there were so many people who are searching African American therapists to help me, because that's what I want, to get through like the specific issues I'm facing. So it really helped him understand, not only for Google, but for the ads he's running. And that's where this whole ecosystem plays into, because I love taking the insights that I find in search and, chatting over to the media or the social person and being like, did you know that people search for this and they're curious about this? And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And you can find a lot of parallels in your different messaging and channels. Keywords Everywhere is another great tool. It's a Chrome plugin. So I have it plugged in on my main Chrome and I use it all the time. It will take whatever you search for in Google. It will show you the volume that people search for it. And then on the side, it'll give you the option to download all of these queries related to that. And I pay for the $10 a month level. The more it's like a credit basis. So the more search results you download, the more you're going to spend. But the other cool thing is that you can also use it on YouTube. So you can take that same plugin, go over to YouTube, and if you have video content that you're trying to optimize, which YouTube is the second largest search engine right after Google, you can use that plugin to see the way that people are searching for things, as well as see which tags people are using on videos when you click on a specific video. It's very sneaky and very fun. SEO Minion is also another plugin that helps you download those. Have you seen those boxes where you ask a question and then Google's like, other people were asking these questions? Those are called People Also Ask boxes. And you can also use SEO Minion to download those, as well as use SEO Minion to do very efficient checks on your website for content opportunities. And then the last free tool that I would throw out there is Google Trends. You can use Google Trends to unearth seasonal insights, local insights. I will say Google Trends has been a little whack since the pandemic. It makes sense. The things that are rising in search are the most important things. So it's been a little funky right now in terms of everything is kind of geared towards that. But with that in mind, you can get to the root of what people are searching for. So if they're focused on what's open, then it's important for you to emphasize whether you are open or whether you're not open across your channels, so that you create that positive user experience. I also wanted to include some publications to follow, because the other side of SEO is just being educated. I am a self-taught SEO. I did not go to school for this. I'm a PR major. And it's something that I've learned by practice, but also by just being educated into what's going on with the industry. Things like EAT, things like algorithm updates, and just keeping a pulse on that will put you ahead of the competition. So that's what I have for you today. I saw some chats come in, so I'll answer those first. But if you also have other questions, feel free to throw them out. And then I see upcoming class on Google My Business. Woo! Yes, and you do need GMB to qualify for Google Arts and Culture, which is, we are so lucky as a city to have had access to that early, and it's free, and it does take a lot of work to prop it up. But once it's propped up, that Arts and Culture page is amazing, and definitely encourage attending that Google My Business class and getting more into it. Somebody asked, what if you do not have a storefront or business address, so don't want your address listed? For instance, working from your home, You don't want to appear on Google My Business, but not your home address. How do you get around this? Seems you have to list an address. Yes, that is true. It's very address focused. However, you can associate a PO box, and you can explore some ways around this. Might be if there's a studio like Made in KC, for instance. I've seen some people say that they're at Made in KC. If you are interested in setting up Google My Business and you don't have a specific address, I would recommend trying to go the PO box route. I'm going to check for you because I believe you can still do that, but if you can't, I will get back to you on it. But yeah, that is a little bit harder, I would definitely say, if you don't have an address, since it is so local focused. But I think a way to maybe get around that would be focusing on how can you emphasize local on your website. So talking about being a Kansas City artist, talking about different, craft fairs or events that you've attended in the Kansas City area. Those might be ways to get around even if you can't create a Google My Business profile. But I will check into that and get that over to Mariah for more info, because the friend I was talking about, she had a similar challenge because she has her studio like in a salon, and it was kind of a headache to get all of it approved, because she was the same way. She's like, I don't want my address on there, but I do want people to be able to find me. So if you do have that kind of situation where you have a more steady place where you will be, that could be something that you consider. Recommendation for an education publication. Yeah, so these publications I have done here, Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, those are very focused on like what's going on in the industry, but they also, and every time that Google Webmaster Blog releases an update, they break it down for you and tell you what's up and let you know how different verticals have been affected. But I would definitely encourage also exploring some of their content where they just have some good educational, like how to optimize a page for featured snippets, how to optimize your videos for YouTube. They have some great resources. Maz and Neil Patel, while they do share about current events, I think those are more great resources for learning. Moz has an amazing and very detailed like 101 crash course where you can just, get in and learn and be, know the basics of SEO after doing that. Any other questions? Cool.
Looks like that might be all for now. Alyssa, thank you so much. And I will say, as like a nerd myself, SEO is kind of the one marketing topic that I just get really excited about. And I love I love a lot of the resources that you shared. I'm familiar with, but there are even some that I did not know about, some like free resources. And I think that we will definitely be doing a 201 class. Like I said, there's Google My Business and Google Arts and Culture classes coming up as well. And just for everyone, yes, Mary Beth, it can be really overwhelming. I see
Yes,
that.
that's definitely overwhelming.
Yes.
And on my end, I'm going to get these links, Mariah. I'll send you a final deck with the additional links added. And I'm curious as well. I want to dig into this local search without an address and see what we can surface for you. So I'll also send some info on that Mariah can send out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you have questions that, pop up at any point, you can always email me and ask. And if I don't know the answer, I will find it for you. I'll text Alyssa and say, hey, can you send me something about this? Or just know that ArtsKC is always a resource. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. And if not, we're here to connect you with the experts that can help you do everything that you want to do with marketing and your organization's kind of digital appearance. So last chance for any questions. We've got 6 minutes on the clock left. If anybody wanted to also just unmute, ask your question, or just share how you think this will be helpful, or what was, let's do this. What was the thing that surprised you most, and what you think you can implement without having to hire an expert?
This is Genevieve. I've just been redoing my website, and the whole idea of the SEO word descriptions, I've done a little bit of it, but I realized that I could do a whole lot more and change things up. So that was very helpful. And just more work to do.
Always more work to do. Never ending.
Yes.
And like Alyssa said, you know, you can learn best practices for SEO today, and the practices are different 6 months from now. So keeping up with those education resources, and we'll try to, you know, as a council, get information out to you as we learn it. But it is kind of a never-ending battle.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I really like the concept of like trying to think about what questions you can answer for your audience when you're trying to write content, because we're sort of rewriting the content on our website and also trying to like have more blog posts and things like that. So I'm always like, I don't even know what we're gonna say. I don't know what to say. But just thinking about it from a perspective of like what questions can we answer, and looking up keywords and search terms and figuring out what people are looking for and thinking about it that way when brainstorming. I like that.
So glad that was useful.
Also, hi, it's nice to see you. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, we'll call it good on the class, and I will send out Alyssa's presentation, and the recording of this will be on YouTube and on the ArtsKC website, along with all of our previous classes. And be sure to answer the survey that I send out so we can make sure we're bringing you content that's useful. Thanks again, Alyssa. I'm sure we will see you again for sharing, to ask you to share more expertise with us.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.